Hi there. You might be wondering about how to discipline your kids. What do we do about punishment? You know, all of that piece of it. I'm Dr. Michelle Alden. This is Parenting Challenging Kids. I'm happy to talk to you about this today. It keeps coming up quite a bit. And what I found is with our kids that tend to overreact, or maybe they shut down really hard, or you have this history of problems whenever you are trying to give them instruction or guide them, or even if you're trying to reward or punish, however, whatever model you're using. And I keep seeing this kind of over and over, that those kids that you have that history with, that's where they go. They may or may not be doing some of the same things that your other kids are doing, but you're more highly sensitive to that, right? So as soon as they move in a direction, it's like everything in your body gets defensive and kind of on alert. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing. Like some of our kids, with some of the things that they've done, it really warrants that, right? Like you don't want another hole in the wall, or a 2-hour meltdown, or whatever it's going to be, or to get somebody to get hurt. And so you're on high alert. And so one of the ways that we deal with that at Healthy Foundations is I have you stay closer to that child, which may seem counterintuitive, because you're like, this is the child I don't want to stay close to. This is the one that's driving me crazy. I want to get as much space between me and this kid as possible, especially when I can tell that they're acting up. But you're going to have to go against that feeling that you have of wanting to get away. And one way that helps is to catch it early, because you're not already irritated. So if this is a child that's, let's just say you can tell they're just on, maybe they had too much sugar, or they didn't get enough sleep, or they had a hard day at school, whatever it is, but they kind of are, I call it fully loaded, right? And they're edgy, or things are starting to happen, or they're not. One of the ways that you can kind of tell too is like if they're not able to follow directions, simple directions, then you know that they're kind of escalating. So if you have my book and I talk about the mountain of escalation, it gives you some things that you can do wherever they are on that mountain of escalation. Recommend that you get that. You can get a download of the mountain of escalation as well. So, well, they're starting to have kind of this behavior that's maybe annoying. Maybe they're having a hard time sitting. Maybe they're, squirmy, tapping their pencil. There may be other kids in the family that are doing the same thing, but this is the kid that it seems like everybody kind of focuses on. And I don't think it's to be mean. I think it's because of this history, right? Like if we don't stop him, he's going to keep going, and then he's going to explode, right? And that mentality is super hard, because it's not like you're necessarily aware of it, right? Like you may not necessarily be aware of it. But if you move in closer and you can catch those behaviors sooner, that can really help. But sometimes I have to have parents kind of take a step back as well, because you might be so close to it that you're just seeing every little thing that they're doing, but you might not see what the other child is doing that is actually also a problem, or can be destructive, or seems like it's okay for them to be getting up and down, or tapping their foot, or interrupting, but this kid is like the one that's on everyone's nerves. So just noticing that in yourself, and sometimes have parents move in closer just so you can kind of catch it sooner before you're irritated. But also make sure that you're not just constantly, I call it like putting kids on a short leash, where you're kind of holding them back the whole time, so they're not able to move forward, because you're so afraid that there's going to be something that they do or say that's going to be wrong, or they're going to go this wrong way. And so we start holding on really tight. And I found that with explosive kids, like by the end of the day especially, like that's more than they can handle. So I want to remind you that you are building a fence instead of keeping them on a leash. You're building a fence that in the parameters. So it's like you can know in your mind that if it gets to this point, then this is what I'm going to do. If it gets to this point, this is what I'm going to do. And it can kind of give a little bit of breathing room there, and allow the kids to also turn it around, right? Like sometimes as soon as they start to do something, like we're just super on it because we want to stop it right now. But and I am not the kind of person that takes a wait and see mindset. Like, you know which direction it's going, so I'm asking you to just physically to like move in closer to or if they're feeling too much pressure, to take a step back, to redirect, to help them go a different way, rather than pushing it right to a place of like, you know, stop it right now, or you better stop, or you're going to get in trouble, or even if that's in your mind, like, I got to stop this, you know. And also I'm asking you to check yourself, because these kids are in trouble a lot, and they are the ones that like are the little instigators of so many things. Just watch yourself and your irritation level. I've seen kids when I'm working in families that, you know, one child has got like, you know, tons of like what would be called irritating behaviors, you know, not really listening, not giving good responses, all the things that I talk to parents about. But the other child, that's the one that's like kind of, you know, the one that's in trouble, the one that's maybe what you would consider your challenging kid, they say one thing, maybe it's even just in remark about like what's had happening, and they kind of get like squashed, you know, like by everybody. So we're not ignoring it, but we're also just watching if we're responding or reacting. And I want you to consider like that situation and what that looks like for you. This may bring up more questions about that, and I can't answer those unless you send those to me. So write the questions down, like but what about this, or what if this is what happens? And if you find yourself thinking, you know, yes, but this is what always happens, like every night after dinner this is what happens, or every day this is what happens, then that gives us information, right? I don't think it happens every single time, but it's happened enough that it gives us information. So then you can look at like, but what else has happened? Like, is it every day, or is it only on days when they, you know, had this appointment during the day? Or is it, you know, it's not that I want to explain it away, but I want you to be able to see what's coming. I would tell parents this all the time too. Like, they would be like, I need to get a night away. My husband and I need to go do something. And so we need to, you know, have the kids be with somebody else. But every time they go to, you know, their grandparents' house or, you know, stay at so-and-so's house, then these are the things that happen. And it's always really bad when we get home. And we could take that information, we could say, okay, is it worth it, right? Like you need the night off. And so you're gonna trade this, right? Like they're gonna have this time, but then just be prepared. Like, okay, so when they get home, they probably haven't slept well. Maybe they ate different food, you know, maybe all these things, but you're gonna kind of know how to come around that differently based on the history, rather than just reacting to it. Like, and by reacting to it, it would be like they start to do something, or they're more whiny or argumentative, and you're like, you're always like this when you get back from your dad's house, or you're always like this when this happens, right? That's a reaction, and it's on us, and it's not really even fair, right? Like, we don't want our stuff thrown at us every time we make a mistake. If I'm a recovering yeller or whatever it is, like, I need to have those opportunities to learn and grow and be guided in a different way. And so I want you to think about that in correcting some of the behaviors with your kids, because it really is a guiding, and it really is a teaching. And the other thing I really like to think about too is when your child has a problem with something, like maybe they had a big fit because you turned off the electronics, or, you know, whatever it was, is to take a step back and realize, like, maybe I need to do more teaching than I thought. But maybe the behavior, well, I know that the behavior is communication about what's going on, but it's also informs us. And so if we look at the behaviors, like they're not doing something to me, but this gives me good information. This is an area that we still need to work on. And if it's repetitive, it's like, yeah, we've been working on it and it still keeps happening. Then we need to think about, like, how can we teach this in a different way? How do we model it? How do we show it? How do we come around this in a different way rather than having these kind of knee-jerk reactions? Because when our kids are very impulsive, they have knee-jerk reactions all the time. And sometimes we as parents do too, because of all of that, right? Like I'm saying, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure that you know which way it's going to go and how it's going to happen. It's just, we have to learn how to respond to those things rather than just reacting to those things. So those are some hints and some tools that you can use when you're thinking about, you know, how to handle these different behaviors. As far as, like, once the behavior happens, I have a lot of parents that are like, okay, well, this is what happened. Don't you think that they should have some consequence or some punishment because they had it? I don't want them to just get away with it. I hear that a lot, like, oh, they're just getting away with it. And I'm like, getting away with what, right? Like, if your child has a meltdown, they have something, you know, they're explosive, and then you're thinking, like, we get through it, you work through it, maybe you're using some of the tools that you've learned, and you got through whatever that meltdown was, and now you're feeling like, okay, but something else needs to happen, like there needs to be some punishment. So I want you to think about, like, how that ties in, and if that's what's really necessary. Sometimes, like, I'll be playing a game with a family, and one of the kids might have a huge, they might start having a problem. Maybe they're fidgety or whatever, and then they're like, you know, kind of causing a problem at the table. And the goal is that we get through the game, right? And that we learn how to take turns, and that we, you know, we're working on these things. So that it's not just ignoring the behavior, although sometimes we may have to, you know, like, not be right on top of every little thing, because especially if you have multiple kids and they're all doing things, but we may have to pause for a minute and say, okay, we're going to take a break, and when you settle down, then, you know, and I like to be specific and not use things like settle down or when you stop. I would say when you're ready, when you're holding your cards, or when you're keeping your hands to yourself, or, you know, whatever it is. If somebody needs to apologize for something they said, then we can continue. And there may be sometimes when we can't finish the game, when it's like, you know, I'm really sorry, but we're not gonna be able to finish this game right now. Everybody needs to take a break, or maybe that one child needs to take a break, and so they have to go sit with another parent. They're not getting away with anything, right? Like, getting away with it would be like, in some way we're rewarding that behavior, but we're stopping, we're dealing with it. And I think that's a better way to look at it. Did I deal with it? And what am I teaching? And what am I looking at? And so just, and this requires a lot of pause from you as a parent. And what I like about working with really challenging kids is that it's very rare that they're throwing something completely new at you. Like, there's certain things that happen certain times of the day, very circular kind of behaviors. So you're going to get lots of chances to get it figured out. Once you get some things figured out and move through some things, then they may throw something new, but you're going to have the same principles or the same tools to apply to it. And so that's why I think it's so important for you as the parent to learn those tools. There's a lot of things about this video that are a little bit vague on, you know, how to deal with it, because I'm not talking about a specific situation. So if you have more specific questions, I would love that. You're welcome to leave those questions in the comments, and I may or may not be able to answer it specifically in the comments, but I will address it. And who knows, maybe it'll show up in another video. If you want some one-on-one help from me about these situations, if you want more help than just watching the videos, that's great. I have that for you. And so you can go to my website, parentingchallengingkids.com, and you can go to the Get Started page, and you can fill out a form and get a free 30-minute coaching session where I can talk to you about the specific situation, but I can also give you some more resources that you can have ongoing that may be really helpful to you. For example, I can do some one-on-one coaching. I have a couple of packages to talk to you about, or if things are really bad at home, you may want to consider doing our 12-week program. So those are all options that are available to you, but you need to sign up for that call in order to know more about those. So you can do that at parentingchallengingkids.com, and I'll leave the links in the description so you can have that. Also, you may want to start with getting the book, Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids, and more questions may come up from there, and we can go from there. So thank you so much for listening today, and like and subscribe, and share it with other people, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.